Dan Novak.
This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. Mikhail Gorbachev, who ended the Cold War without bloodshed but failed to prevent the collapse of the Soviet Union, died on Tuesday at the age of 91, hospital officials in Moscow said. Gorbachev, the last Soviet president, forged arms reduction deals with the United States in partnerships with Western powers to remove the Iron Curtain that had divided Europe since World War II and bring about the reunification of Germany. But his broad internal reforms helped weaken the Soviet Union to the point where it fell apart, a moment that President Vladimir Putin has called the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. But Putin did express his deepest condolences, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, as he told Interfax news agency. Ukraine's presidential office reported heavy fighting Tuesday in the Kherson region in southern Ukraine, an area occupied by Russian forces, where Ukraine says it has launched a counteroffensive to try to retake territory. Moscow acknowledged the offensive by Ukraine near the city of Kherson, but also said it had failed and that Ukrainians had suffered significant casualties. Anna Chernikova in Kyiv updates VOA's Flashpoint Ukraine.
What armed forces of Ukraine has confirmed as of now that Ukrainian forces managed to destroy another pontoon crossing of the Russian forces across the Dnipro River in one of the areas of the Kherson region. Representative of the Ukrainian forces said that about 30 units of Russian military equipment was destroyed with this heat, and more than 80 Russian soldiers were killed.
This is VOA News. U.S. President Joe Biden's speech in the northeastern state of Pennsylvania on Tuesday was mainly about gun violence, but at the end he launched into a condemnation of those who are attacking the Federal Bureau of Investigation following the agency's search of former President Donald Trump's home in Florida. The story from VOA's chief national correspondent Steve Herman in Washington.
President Biden called the attacks on the FBI sickening. He also said one cannot be pro-law enforcement and pro-insurrection, a reference to the January 6, 2021 siege at the U.S. Capitol that briefly halted the certification of the election in which Biden beat Trump. Without naming him, the president also criticized Republican Senator Lindsey Graham for his recent remark that there will be riots in the streets if Biden's predecessor as president is prosecuted.
No one expects politics to be a patty cake. It sometimes gets mean as hell. But the idea you turn on the television and see senior senators and congressmen saying, if such and such happens, there'll be blood in the street. Where the hell are we?
The strong remarks by Biden come 2 days before he is to deliver a primetime address outside Philadelphia's Independence Hall about what the White House characterizes as the continued battle for the soul of the nation. Midterm congressional elections are just more than 2 months away, with the Democrats hoping to retain control of both the House and the Senate. Steve Herman, VOA News, Washington.
The United Nations and Pakistan have appealed for $160 million in emergency funds for nearly 500,000 displaced victims of record-breaking floods that have killed 1,162 people since mid-June. The appeal was issued at a ceremony in the capital, Islamabad, with the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urging the international community to help Pakistan in handling damage caused by floods. On Tuesday, Pakistani authorities, backed by the military, continued battling the aftermath of the floods that have affected more than 33 million people, or 1 in 7 Pakistanis. Recapping our top story, Mikhail Gorbachev, who ended the Cold War without bloodshed but failed to prevent the collapse of the Soviet Union, died at age 91 on Tuesday, hospital officials in Moscow said. Gorbachev, the last Soviet president, forged arms reduction deals with the United States and partnerships with Western powers to remove the Iron Curtain that had divided Europe since World War II and bring about the reunification of Germany. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. This is VOA News, reporting by remote. I'm Joe Ramsey. United Nations inspectors arrived on Wednesday in the southern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia on a mission to prevent a nuclear accident at a Russian-occupied power plant where nearby shelling has prompted global fears of disaster. The International Atomic Energy Agency team reached the city 55 kilometers away from the plant, where they were likely to spend the night before arriving at the facility on Thursday. Although Russian-installed officials suggested the visit might last only one day, the IAEA hopes for longer. Russia captured the nuclear plant, Europe's largest, in early March, and its military force has been there ever since. A U.S. assessment says the Russian military is facing severe manpower shortages. AP correspondent Mike Gracia reports.
A U.S. intelligence finding says the Russian military is experiencing severe manpower shortages in its war with Ukraine and becoming more desperate to shore up the ranks. A U.S. official who spoke to the AP on condition of anonymity said Russia is now turning to compelling soldiers who were wounded earlier in the war to return to combat and recruiting personnel from private security companies and even prisons. The official added that U.S. intelligence has determined Russia's defense ministry is expected to recruit convicted criminals to enlist in exchange for pardons and financial compensation. With the grinding war now in its sixth month, Russian President Vladimir Putin last week ordered the Russian military to increase troops by 137,000 effective January 1st. Mike Gracia, Washington.
Find more on these stories and the rest of the day's news on our website, voanews.com, or follow us on the VOA mobile app. This is VOA News. U.S. health regulators have authorized the first update to COVID-19 vaccines. AP Washington correspondent Sagar Magani reports.
Until now, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have targeted the virus's original strain. The updated boosters are aimed at taking on today's most common Omicron strains and other variants.
So it really provides the broadest opportunity for protection.
Pfizer vaccine chief Annalisa Anderson. Now that the FDA has signed off, shots could begin within days, but the CDC must still recommend who should get them. And the question remains, who will want them? Just half of vaccinated Americans got the first recommended booster. Only a third of those 50 and over received a second one. Sagar Magani, Washington.
More than 50,000 monkeypox cases have been recorded in the global outbreak, WHO figures showed Wednesday. Though transmission is slowing in the virus hotspots of Europe and the United States, the World Health Organization's dashboard listed the more than 50,000 cases and 16 deaths as reported this year to the UN agency, which declared the outbreak a global public health emergency in July. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the declines in new infections proved the outbreak could be halted. A toxic red tide is blamed for dead fish in the San Francisco Bay Area in the western U.S., AP correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
An unprecedented red tide in the San Francisco Bay Area is killing thousands of fish and other marine life whose carcasses are washing ashore, creating a foul odor that experts say could get worse during this weekend's expected heat wave. Crews have begun to remove dead crabs, bat rays, striped bass, and other fish that began piling up on the rocky shores of Oakland's Lake Merritt over the weekend. The fish die off at Lake Merritt and at spots throughout the Bay Area, maybe due to a harmful algae bloom that has been spreading across the bay since late July. Most algae blooms end after a week or so. Officials say a years-long drought has prevented stagnant water from flowing into the ocean, and unseasonably warm and sunny weather may be helping the algae spread. Reports of dead fish started coming in last week. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Recapping our top story, United Nations inspectors arrived on Wednesday in the southern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia on a mission to prevent a nuclear accident at a Russian-occupied power plant where nearby shelling has prompted global fears of disaster. Although Russian-installed officials suggest the visit may last only one day, the IAEA hopes for longer. Russia captured the plant, Europe's largest, in early March, with its military holding force. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey, VOA.